Kritika, my first question is to you. You and I started our journey about the same time. We moved to India in 2010, and she has much more column space than I ever could. And you came here representing a very established brand, Facebook, and not very well known in India at that time. And they've really worked on increasing the awareness, usage, etc. But when you first came here, I'm sure the whole press wanted to talk to you, etc. What was your preparation like? What are the things you needed to do before you figure out what is Facebook's strategy here?
Sure. Okay, before I answer that question, I'd love to just get a read of the audience, yeah?
Yeah.
So just a quick show of hands. How many women entrepreneurs do we have here? Oh my, how amazing. Can we give this room a huge round of applause? Incredible. Male entrepreneurs, I see that we do. Amazing men here. Okay. There you go. Okay, large companies. People working, male, female, large companies. Okay, all right.
Good representation.
Very good representation. And incredible, right? I mean, 10% of all entrepreneurs are women. I think half of them are here. So fantastic. Well done.
Yeah.
So Lakshmi, to think about the question that you asked me, right? How did I think about this when I started at Facebook? Honestly, when I started, I didn't spend very much time thinking about that question. Yeah? And certainly, when I joined Facebook, I was the first employee for Facebook in India. We had 8 million people connecting on Facebook then. Today, thanks to the fantastic work of our user growth team, we have over 140 million people. We had just Facebook, the app then, the big blue app. Today, we also have WhatsApp, Instagram, Messenger, Oculus.
You kept acquiring things through the years.
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey over the years. As I reflect on what's important in representing a big, successful brand, 3 things come to mind. Number one, knowing that every employee and every interaction, it's one thing about the leader, but know that every employee and every interaction really speaks to the brand. It's like walking into a Starbucks, talking to the partner. That's what they call the people who serve coffee at Starbucks. It's their partners, where they greet you with a big smile and they say, they're already smiles. They say, welcome to Starbucks. And they're empowered to fix your drink if it isn't right? So every employee, every interaction really speaks to your brand. So for all of us, we have to obsess about how much we invest in the team in having them understand the brand and how much we are putting in place the values, the culture, the processes, such that it reflects our brand. So that's one. From a leadership point of view, again, when we started, we weren't thinking too much about the PR strategy per se. We were really thinking about how do we build the business. And as a leader, I spent a lot of time just understanding what was Facebook's PR approach. In our case, it's really about putting our partners and our clients at the center and letting them speak to what they're doing on the platform, because it's what they do on the platform that really makes us what it is. I even remember when I did a change of roles 3 years ago and started building out our marketing solutions organization. Again, the first year of that was all inward, building the team, figuring out our strategy, which verticals we focus on, building lighthouse clients where they were growing their business on our business. And it was then that we started talking about our stories. So that was a journey and the progression, and it's been
so very inward
incredible.
Focus before you start speaking. And I totally agree with you. Devjani and I were talking about Andy Grove a little earlier, who just passed away recently. And his edict at Intel was that you do and then you talk. You never talk plans. You finish the project when the chip is ready to be delivered tomorrow. That's when you talk, not before that. And
I had the fortune of actually studying with Andy Grove. Andy Grove teaches.
Correct.
He taught
strategic management,
at the course. And I remember I had my baby 2 weeks later. I was in class because I didn't want to miss Andy Grove's class.
So, Varsha, you have actually background in both large companies as well as a startup. You were at McKinsey. Anjali was talking about it. And then after that, you started Eve.com with a co-founder in Idea Labs. So I'm curious, as a representative of the company versus as a representative of your own startup, in what way is your public persona or the way you represent the company differ in both those situations, or if they do?
What I would say is if you're at the right company, if you're in a larger organization, it's really not that different. When I was the founder of Eve, it was myself, my co-founder. We were two women and a PowerPoint, and that's how we started. We went out, we raised funding. It was our mission and our vision right from the beginning. And we were the target audience. We were selling cosmetics online. We were the first to be doing it. It was really back when people thought women would not even buy on the internet. It was a while ago. And
15 years ago.
Yeah, it was 15 years ago. And so it was very much at the center of us. We were the representative users. We could convey the passion. We knew the use cases. And then we were able to bring people, as leaders, we were able to bring people around us, attract them to our mission, wanting to be part of this journey of basically empowering other people to feel confident, get access to beauty products wherever they lived and at a whole range of price points. And so I think what we were able to do well as founders and as leaders was create a vision that was attractive to other people and bring people into that vision and allow them to kind of make that vision their own and to bring it to life. I think now that I'm at Airbnb, what I really admire about our founders is that they have created a mission that is truly global around connecting people. And truthfully, in this day and age, I will say that I would say it's even more important to have an incredibly strong and powerful mission because the millennial audience today is very mission-driven in terms of our workforce, even probably back when I started at Eve. And so I think the other thing that has great leaders today, I see, and our founders at Airbnb are a really great example of that, is even from the very earliest days, they created core values around what they wanted the culture to be like. It was literally the three of them. They had no other employees, but they sat down and they wrote down what their core values, what they wanted them to be. And I always think, having been a founder myself, I think, wow, that's incredible foresight because, I'll be honest, myself and my co-founder, we never did that 15 years ago. And so, but I think about how it's really helped us as a company as we've grown incredibly fast at Airbnb and we've gone global, that consistency of talent that we can attract. We all have implicit trust in each other because the core values are so strong. I think that is actually probably one of the first things that entrepreneurs should be thinking about from a leadership standpoint.
So, Varsha, when you were interviewed, did they make sure you stayed at an Airbnb home before they hired you? Not really? No,
I mean, the truth is, it's not about what they make you do. It's what you want to do if you are the right person for the company. No one really in their right mind goes and interviews at Airbnb without trying the product, staying at the product. You really need to know what it's like to be a guest and ideally even what it's like to be a host because our product is our hosts around the world. And so, again, if you're creating the right culture, you'll be attracting people who will on their own go out and have that initiative. And if they don't have that initiative, then it's like an immediate check that probably there's not a fit.
So, Kritika, let me ask you this. As a rep of Facebook in India, you deal with press a lot. Today we are talking about, establishing your own leadership brand, creating it, etc. And while talking to them, you say one thing, they may write some other thing. You may say you did X, and they may say you did X, Y, Z. Have you had situations where what you said and what you came out wasn't quite the same? Tell me your experience of the truth and the
What do you think the answer to that question is? Do you think the press always writes what's right? What do we think?
Shraddha does, right?
Yeah. Hey, so there are two sides to this, right? So, I think the audience knows the answer. As an individual, it's always important, while I said every interaction speaks to the brand, it's really important to delineate that you are a person representing a brand, but you are a person and you are not the brand, right? Those are two different things. And I'll talk about how that worked in one particular example, and I'll directly answer your question as well. when I was invited to one of my first top woman in business awards, I remember walking out of the door and my husband says, "Oh, congratulations, so proud of you." And I looked back at him and I said, "Dave, it's Facebook that causes me to fall on that list. It's Facebook and the team that did this work, right? So, it's okay." And he actually sat me down. He sat me down and he said, "No, listen, this is really important for us to talk about this. I agree that it's Facebook. I agree that it's the team. But you are the one playing the role of managing director of Facebook, and there is a reason why you are in that role, right? So while it is important to stay grounded, let's also be sure that we celebrate our successes. Keep the distinction, have everything in its own place." So that's story one. To your question of have things been written, it's worked in many different ways, right? I vividly remember this example where, something was written and someone who I really respect a lot wrote an email to me and said, "Kritika, go ahead, take credit for what you haven't done." It was someone whom I really respected. Now, how many of you likes receiving an email like that says, go ahead and take credit for what you want? In that particular example, we actually had an email transcript with a journalist where we had clarified, all of the attributions, etc. But of course, they went and they write what they want to write. But that doesn't always happen, right? In this case, I was really grateful that the person, if he felt that way, actually told me about it, so I was able to address it with him. But I'm thinking to myself, there's another few thousand people reading this article who's going to think, yeah, Kritika goes and takes credit for what she hasn't done. At that point, it was really important that, my manager came by and said, "Listen, you know what you've done, you've acted with, the complete right intent, the integrity with which you operate. Just keep going. Don't let this bother you. Don't let this break your spirit." Again, it's really, really important to, one, have that certainty about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then also know that you are an individual representing a brand, but you are also two distinct entities.
Just continue on the first part of the story of taking credit or not credit. One of the things, I don't know if I can classify it as Indian women thing or my thing. When I first joined Intel, everybody would come and say, "Oh God, Lakshmi, you did such a great job." I'm like, "Oh no, I didn't do it. John did it, Susie did it, whatever." Because you feel, how can you take credit? So Barbara, who was my boss, stepped me aside. And in Intel, we have this ranking and rating, where you're rated against your compatriots. She said, "You make it so difficult for me to bat for you, because anytime I say, 'But look what Lakshmi did,' they say, 'No, Lakshmi didn't do it. Susie did it, or John did it.'" She said, "The one lesson I want you to remember is when someone gives you a compliment, just say thank you and shut up. Nothing else." And it's been something that stayed with me for the last 20 years, because we're very good at, not me. Anyway, Varsha, talking about people, hiring people. When you were in Eve.com, here you both are young entrepreneurs, and I'm sure you had to hire people of all ages, experiences, etc. Tell me a little bit about how was it to actually hire? Were there situations where you thought, this is not the right person? Or how do you build a team when you're so young, but everybody you need to work with probably is more experienced than you?
So, yeah, it was a really, really incredible challenge and journey. I mean, the two of us, we were basically, I would say, highly unqualified to be entrepreneurs. We had come from consulting and banking and finished business school, and that's it. And we had an idea. And so we had to build, all joking aside, we had core skills, let's say, and we had a great work ethic. But we didn't have industry experience in cosmetics. We were not technical, none of those things. And so one of the first pieces of advice, we knew we needed cosmetics expertise because, of course, that was the industry we were going into. And a friend of ours, actually my partner, my co-founder's roommate, not her roommate, her next door neighbor, we met her and she said, I know just the woman who has the expertise for you. And we got funding from an incubator and Bill Gross at Idea Lab, and we set up this meeting with this woman who happened to live in Southern California. And we met her, and after the meeting, Bill came, and we sat down with Bill, and he was like, well, what do you think? And Miriam and I we were talking, we looked at each other, and we were like, well, she's great. She's so nice. She's phenomenal, but she's really different from us. You know,
in what way was she different from you?
Well, she was like all over the place. Like, you know, we were like really like linear, you know, we were very organized, analytical, and she was like blah, 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 blah. I mean, she was also, at the time, she was probably like late 50s, like incredibly warm spirit, boisterous, like, and that was actually at the moment when Bill said to us, well, why do you need somebody else who's exactly like you? You need her because she brings all the contacts in the cosmetics industry. You need her precisely for the reason that she's not like you. And it was a really great turning point for us to say, you're right. You know, her style is totally different. Her expertise is totally different. And that's actually why she's a really great complement to us. And so we brought her on, incredibly valuable to us. We have ended up becoming like, you know, we became really close. She stayed with us the entire journey. She helped us bring in industry talent, senior merchandising talent, and other folks that we would never have actually had probably access to as well. And so it's just a small example of when you're building out your team, you really need to think about what are your gaps as a leader and making sure you're open-minded enough to bring in the right talent to make sure you have a great rounded leadership team.
That's it. Same advice my dad gave me about my marriage. Why do you need to marry somebody the same? Marry somebody different. So, because I had 20,000 reasons why I can't marry any man on this earth, because nobody is good enough. So, Varsha, just continuing on, Eve.com, there was a time when you both decided to sell the company, exit the company. And I'm sure things were still going great. You know, people were willing to give you money. And, do you go IPO? There's all these things an entrepreneur goes through. So tell me take yourself back to that time and tell me what was going on in your mind that made you make that decision.
So it was really a really crazy time and a wonderful time, I suppose. I guess, first of all, we were always very passionate about what we were doing, and we wanted to continue to grow. We had grand visions for our business and our company. So I think it started off with that. We always saw capital as a means to enabling us to grow the business, not an end in and of itself. And so we had gone through a couple of rounds of fundraising, an incubator round, a Series A, a Series B, and we were in the process of starting to raise a Series C. And at that time, we noticed a couple things. First of all, we were approached by all the banks to do an IPO. And so we sat in a few of these meetings, and truthfully, it was hard to imagine. We were like, wow, these people think we can go public. Like, that's kind of crazy. Like, really? And so, but we listened, and, we were listening. We were taking it all in. We were also actually in a fundraising round in a process, and we were very close to raising probably about $40 million. We'd already raised about $25 million. And it was at that time that we got an offer to be acquired by a big luxury company, LVMH. And it was a moment that caused us to pause. And, we said, we sense that the tides are changing a little bit. It had always been incredibly easy to raise money at that time. The Series B round it was almost comical. We had our launch party, and we had people who gave us term sheets at the party. And we were wearing dresses, and so we didn't even have any place to put them. So, and by the time the Series C came around, it was a lot more difficult to tell the story, the unit economics, all of those things. And so we started to sense that the tides were changing, and we knew that we weren't profitable yet. We needed capital to sustain the business. And so we thought, maybe we should think about these various options in a really serious way. And we also got great advice from our board. And I think I really credit our board with being really mature and saying, you know what, this is your first venture. This is a really solid offer that this company has given you, and you should really think about accepting it. So it turns out that we ended up selling our business, not to that company, but to are actually one of our investors who put another offer on the table. And we ended up having a successful exit. But it was not an IPO, and I think it actually was for the best interest of the business and for us, just given the environment that subsequently happened.
Yeah, and you stayed on, and ultimately it was the right decision, because otherwise you would have had to let everyone go. And so I think sometimes, I mean, of course, in retrospect, every decision is great, but it's great that you made it at that time.
I would just say, I do think that a board is really, really valuable at that moment. It was our first experience. We really relied on advice from others. And to have a board that's really kind of measured and can give you great advice, it's probably one of the most critical times when your board advice really matters.
Yeah. So now I'm going to ask both of you about, we've been talking about the positive, the things you have to do out there as a leader, building your own brand, building the company brand, etc. But have there been situations also where it affects you negatively? Starting with you, Kritika, when you've already decided to move back to US after being here for 6 years, and then the Free Basics happens, and the timing felt like you're going back because Free Basics didn't work, and you've been asked that also before. But you went through a certain decision process and said, hey, life goes on. So tell us about what is it like when, things don't go as you planned, and how did you go through that decision? Did you think of maybe we should wait for another year or not? Or tell me what you went through.
Yeah. So returning back was something that has been on our mind for about a year and a half. That's when I first spoke to Facebook and said, it looks like going back seems to be a matter of when, not if. And now with my 2 girls going to high school and middle school this coming year, it was just a forcing function where we knew that we had to do it. So we had applied for schools. We had announced it all internally, so everyone internally knew. We were beginning to reach out to potential successors, and that's when Free Basics happened, right? So we did debate about it. We said, okay, what do we do? On one, our decision was a decision, right? You just keep going ahead. You don't change decisions for something like that. And 2, as a company, we really pride ourselves on being transparent and being open in our communication. And we really wanted partners and clients to hear directly from us versus it somehow being leaked that, we are interviewing for a successor through external means. So I went ahead, I posted on Facebook. I think within hours it made regional news, global news, all India newspapers. And it was fascinating, right? That weekend I actually happened to be at a wedding in Chandigarh. So moments like these have its highs and its lows. One of the hilarious moments were when they were picking up pictures for my Facebook profile, and there was a picture that says, someone who carried this article that says, the real reason Kirtika Reddy quits, and they had a picture of me with my colleague's Nani, right? I have no idea what the picture has to do with the title, but that was the picture. You should go look for it. It's a beautiful, she has a gorgeous Nani, Nani and me, and real reason why Kirtika Reddy quit. But it was funny. And
he wants to get old happy in America, or what was it?
I have no idea. There was no correlation between the pictures of the wedding and the real reason Kirtika quit. So we had a lot of fun about the coverage. But it did have its moments too when people were calling you and friends and family were calling you and saying, "What's going on? Have you quit?" And it was like, "Oh God, you don't want your friends and your family to go through it." Mm-hmm. But then it lasted for 24 hours, and
press forgot about you already.
I know, and I'm talking about how we're making a big bet on mobile video. I'm going to talk to ET now in a few hours about our bet on mobile video. Yeah. So life goes on, Keep the two different.
And how about you, Varsha? Was there ever a time when you felt, man, it can't go on or down? I mean, or has it always been a positive ride for you?
Well, I think every entrepreneur knows that being an entrepreneur is a roller coaster, right? I mean, there must be. I mean, I will say. I mean, I've been part of. I founded INKtalks, and then I've been at Living Social and now at Airbnb, and they're all basically startups. Some are bigger and some are smaller. And I would tell you that it's an absolute roller coaster. So if you're in it, there must be something that's either crazy about you, or you have somehow managed to manage it. Because at least for me, I always felt like I had to be working for something, a mission or a vision that I found was so powerful and so compelling to take you through the low moments that you invariably will have. When you didn't get the sale or the client or the launches didn't happen the way you would like. Because I would say that never is there a straight path to the top. I can remember so many times where, in the early days of Eve, no cosmetic brand would come onto our platform. I would wake up at 6 a.m. because I was living in San Francisco in my pajamas and literally spend the entire day calling cosmetics companies to convince somebody to start to sell online, and nobody would do it until we met two women who were the founders of Benefit Cosmetics. And somehow they thought you were smart and interesting and there might be something there, and they gave us the first contract, and they were exclusive to us, and it was, I think I remember, like January, 1999, and that was the snowball, or the thing that allowed them the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. And so, for all of if you're not persistent, you're probably not an entrepreneur. And I think but hopefully the highs are so high that it makes up for the low moments. And you're doing something that you're truly passionate about, that otherwise, that's what really keeps you going. And that's what's been for me.
At least I find as an entrepreneur, you gotta have a very strong stomach. It's not at all glamorous, and it's very, very tough. And because you can't show to the others what's going on. But something happened in the last couple of days I want to share with you. We build a platform, we have a lot of stories, and our whole thing is we say, imagination to impact. Here are all these great people. How can we connect them to others to make them successful? But we are not an agency, we are not this, we are not that. We know what we are not. We keep saying, what are we? Is what we are doing is even useful? Is it even worth it? So you go through these things. So 3 days ago, I got a mail from this girl who's a chess player. And, she lives in Rajahmundry, and she somehow has participated in a lot of chess tournaments. And she's in the verge of, if she gets this last thing, she can qualify for a world tournament now. And she just doesn't have the money to fly to Greece. And she was very desperate. She applied to be an INK fellow. And she literally has been writing to me every other day for the last month, I need airfare, I need this. She needed about $3,000. But I'm like, how are we going to give it? Because we can't give it. She's not a current fellow, So I just shot off 3 mails to 3 of our inner circle members. I said, look, here is his background. Here is all the coverage. She needs the money. Can anybody help? All 3 of them wrote back and said yes. And and this is on Friday morning. She was literally like giving up hope on Friday morning. On Sunday morning, she was on a flight to Greece. And she went there and she wrote back to us, and her competition is on 19th. And Lalitesh, who's not only gave her this, he sent her a laptop so she can practice chess online. And when she comes back, we're going to sit with her and connect her with a coach and really plan her next 5 years for her. So when all it needs is one thing to happen for you to say, okay, it's worth all the 50,000 crappy moments you have to go through on a minute by minute basis, So I always say that think of the one positive thing, and there's plenty of negative ones.
Add one thing. One of our core values at Airbnb is to be a serial entrepreneur, serial with a C. And I don't know how many of you guys know the story, but I think the founders of Airbnb, it seems like it's an overnight success. It's absolutely not. The founders started Airbnb because of a design conference. They needed money. And then they had some people who came in and were willing to rent air mattresses, that whole thing. And so they had a germ of a concept that they realized was something. But it really took them, they ended up going for 3 years without much traction at all. And that is a long time as an entrepreneur. And they had maxed out every single credit card. They had taken out 40 credit cards. They had one of those binders with all the the little places filled out. And they got so desperate that they were completely out of money, and there was the Democratic National Convention that came into town in Denver. And that year it had like moved at the last minute. And so actually there was a need for housing places for people to stay. And so there were Airbnbs that were popping up around Denver. And just at the same time, they were both designed, 2 out of the 3 were designers. And so they designed these cereal boxes, limited edition cereal boxes, one for Obama and one for McCain, were the 2 candidates. And they sold them for $40 each on eBay. And they ended up selling 1,000 boxes of the Obama O's. And I don't think they sold many of the McCain ones, but that was enough money, basically, to enable them to kind of carry out the business, to take it to the next level. And then truly what ended up taking them to the next level is they applied for Y Combinator. And that was kind of like their last-ditch effort. They were still not getting the traction they wanted. And Paul Graham actually, he was about to kind of reject their whole concept, but then Joe, who's one of the founders, pulled out a box of Obama O's, gave it to Paul, and Paul was like, well, what is this? Tell me the story behind this. And so they told him the story, and I think Paul Graham, the way I hear it is, he said, well, look, these guys are crazy. They will do anything. And I'm not sure this idea around air mattresses is really the idea, but if they've come up with this level of creativity to survive, they're going to figure this out. And so they got into the program, and then that actually what ended up taking them to the next level, So one of our core values is being a serial entrepreneur, which I think we try to take to the business every single day, because often the problems are not solved. There's no playbook, and you've got to figure it out every single day. And you need that kind of scrappy hunger and persistence to stay at things in order to really win.
That's great. So I have to wrap up I started with a story, I have to wrap up on a story of a guy who's called in to fix a boat. They've been trying to fix the boat for like 10 days. They can't fix it. The guy comes with a little hammer, and then he goes in, like taps somewhere, and then takes the hammer, does something, and the boat starts. 2 minutes work. So his bill comes next day, and it says $10,000. And the management freaks out, like the guy was here for 2 minutes. Why is it $10,000? So the guy he said, can you explain your bill? He explains the bill, he writes it to say, to tap, $1. To know where to tap, $9,999. So the reason I want to wrap up is that as entrepreneurs, one of the things is know your worth and ask for it. And I think that's one of the things a lot of us are hesitant to do. But know what $9,999 worth is. Have a great time. Thank you.